Let's do it, Kevin. Let's get into the art, sir. Let's get into what
Yes,
everyone
thank you.
is here for. Yes. And hello, everyone. I'm Mitch. I'll be interviewing Kevin about his art pieces. So thank you for all attending. Let's do it, sir. What are we going to start with?
Yeah. Well, we're going to start. I intentionally positioned it in front of this piece. I developed a theme as I went into the exhibit, and that was very much about doors, portals, thresholds. To me, the garden is a doorway. It's a portal to a place in my imagination or into a spiritual world, which is incredibly sacred. And I think that that's very well represented here in the bougainvillea, that we can all find places in the flowers that we can go into and go deeper into ourselves. And you'll see this image and ideas of the doorway show up again and again.
What about the colors? Why those colors?
Well, I paint with watercolor on Stonehenge aqua, and I am using the colors very accurately in this case from the flowers and from the garden. So this is bougainvillea. It's very common in California and Mexico, I think, probably not so common on the East Coast, but it's a gorgeous purple flower, pink, very much about passion. And I stay very true to the colors of the flowers because I can't invent anything more fantastic than what I see in front of me in nature.
So this is a portal into a garden. What does a garden mean to you? Because you paint so many of your paintings are about gardens.
And in fact, we met in the gardens, I think. To me, the garden is something that's timeless. The garden is something that goes back to our spiritual beginnings in many traditions, including the Western Christian and Jewish traditions. And we go back to the Garden of Eden and we start in the garden. I believe that our ancestors, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, I think there were gardens. There was the hanging gardens. There was often a garden that was a sacred place, and that would be a place where you'd come together and do rituals and unite. And you'd get to go. It's not that there's a doorway into the garden. It's that the garden is a doorway. And for me, I use that garden as a doorway, especially in this exhibit, to go deeply into my imagination.
I like that. So this piece is called Open Doors. And again, it's a portal into the garden. What happens, Kevin, once we go through the portal?
Well, I like it to be, I don't want to give people, none of these pieces spell out what you're supposed to experience, because the garden doesn't spell out what you're supposed to experience. The garden opens an operative, possibly it's winter time, and we don't have the access to the garden to go off into that space. So like any meditation, the garden is a tool. It's a place. It's a sacred place that you can go to and go into a very personal and transcendent spiritual place for yourself.
All right, good. So again, Kevin, you will pace me here. Shall we move to the next piece, or?
Yeah, I think we can move to some pieces that go into a different style. And these are some of the very first adorned pieces. One of the questions that people often have for me is how these pieces come together. And I think I'd just like to take a small one off of the wall and give everyone an opportunity to look at it close up. This is done in several different layers, and the top layer is simply paper that I lay on my easel when I go out to the garden. All three of these paintings here are done in the Oakland Rose Gardens. And I have an idea in mind of what I want to paint. I do, if you've ever seen, come to do an exhibit when I have sketchbooks out, I have tons of sketchbooks out or tons of sketchbooks where I've thought through the flowers, thought through the birds, thought through the shapes, and even thought through the beads. But I do believe that it's important to go into the garden to actually paint the flowers. The plastic on the back is an acrylic, and I mount the paper. I varnish the paper and I mount it to the acrylic. And the acrylic is laser cut. It comes from Mr. Plastic in San Leandro, which supplies some of the highest quality paper or some of the highest quality acrylics to artists, and right now to medical people to help prevent COVID. And I'm able to drill right into this with a craft drill and mount the beads right on that. And then and to me, the reason that these come off their stands is these are sacred objects. These are objects that really have become, I think, regalia, and are something that would be used in a ritual or would be used would be put on an altar, or would be something that you would keep in a place that was sacred to you. And the mounting is also, I can't take this off of the wall, but this is meant to evoke a sense of endless mist, a sense. This is another example of the door. This is a mirror, but it's obscured by the translucent white. And it becomes like that mist that separates waking reality from the world of dreams, the physical reality from a place where magic is possible and happens. And so the pieces sit right at that doorway, or right at that threshold between this world and something that's greater and more magical.
There's so many questions to ask about these, and we're going to see a number of pieces that have a similar style here. Let me begin about the shape of the art piece itself. It's very detailed and elaborate. Tell me about the shape of these.
I have thought up different shapes for different flowers. So for the roses, I have very symmetrical shapes. And to me, now that I've completed them all, they seem like something that might hang in a romanticized version of King Arthur's court, for example. So if Merlin had some artwork up in his office, he might have something that was cut into this shape. The shape is an idea. It's to get out of the frame. It's to, I've felt like I've been constrained by 4 sides of a painting and the 2-dimensionality of frames for so long that I've really looked for a way to bring the artwork out into the room with the viewer and make you a part of the artwork. But the different shapes, different flowers you'll see, for example, orchids have a totally different design than the roses. And I'd like to think that different flowers do inspire different designs, different feelings, different ideas in the way that they're put together and shaped.
You have to tell us about all the beads. There is a story behind this.
Yes, these beads actually come mainly from Taiwan. Poluan and I were in Taiwan my last trip to Asia before we were locked down. I thought it would be a great thing to go and take advantage of all of the markets of the old Chinese sections within Taipei that sell fabric, that sell beads and jade. And so we went into some stores that could possibly have come right out of Harry Potter. And so this is you're getting rose quartz, white jade, amethyst, some real, and then Swarovski crystals, which are also in abundance in Asia. You'll see in these pieces, there's a lot of agate and lapis lazuli as well. And the beads are constructed not so much like you would construct a friendship bracelet, although I have plenty of those and love them. But these are constructed more like you would make beads, you would put together sacred regalia. And so they're very intentional, and you'll also notice that each one of these doesn't just have random beads, but it has a very specific design for that piece.
Also interesting how mobile, how you can take these pieces off the base, and then when you put them on the base, it's almost like a whole new experience observing it. Tell me about the relationship of the piece to the base.
Again, the base doesn't just represent like a mounting or a place that's convenient to hang the piece. The base actually represents a portal. It represents a gateway, so that this piece is sitting in one sense in our physical reality, so that you can reach out and hold it. But right behind the mist, or the dreamlike atmosphere that the space creates, is a whole nother world where your dreams come from, and where there's a different reality that's available to you.
I like that. I like that a lot. Kevin, what do we want to look at next?
We can continue on our walk, and there's a couple more roses that will go by. I live a couple of blocks from one of the most beautiful rose gardens in the world, the Oakland Garden of Roses. And in my two-dimensional pieces, I'll draw a contrast. Before I began doing the three-dimensional pieces, I had already been looking for a way to use the painting to separate myself from reality, and to separate the flowers from gravity, separate them, put them into a realm of dreams. And I think that this is something that I see a lot of floral designers, like, for example, my friends at Novo Bloom, do a lot of, and if you're not familiar with them, they're doing some of the most cutting edge work in the Bay Area. And they have given themselves, as a floral designer and as a flower painter, I give myself permission to cut free of gravity, to cut free of constraints of space and time, and I put together a piece that, again, that you get the sense of this portal, that this ascent is always possible into a heaven that's just beyond the garden.
Any significance of the frame? And I notice it's a frame that looks similar, albeit smaller, than the actual portal piece that we began with.
Yeah, all these pieces, I could take a smaller one off the wall when we get to it, but I think this will be okay. All of these pieces are very simply framed. They're on paper, but there's no glass. And what I've done is I've varnished the paper, so that in my process of removing the frames from the artwork and giving the artwork the ability to move out into your house or into a museum or into a gallery, one of the first things that I wanted to do was remove the glass. And my husband Palun and I worked on this a lot, on developing we experimented with box frames, we experimented with different ways to float the paintings. And ultimately, I like these frames that float the painting in front of a three-dimensional black drop-off, and allow you to physically touch the art. And As Michael would attest, this Michael Ginsberg, this is entirely safe. I could spill ketchup on this and be safe to wipe it off with a damp microfiber cloth very carefully, but it would be all right. And I feel that this unlike a painting that's behind glass, I feel that this allows you if you own a piece of artwork, or if you're spending time with a piece of artwork, you don't want to be separated from that. I feel very much like if we're separated by something, then it's not available to us. And I feel like there's so much art that's been separated from us, put into anthropology museums, and it's not even supposed to be called art. It's called something else. It's behind glass. I want to come out from behind the glass and give everyone the artwork. I think.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. Well, I would just add, I mean, the thing I'd also like about that is oftentimes when you're looking at pieces inside a frame with a glass, is sometimes it's hard to see because of the glare, and or nearby bright lights, so the reflection that they give off. So that's really neat. What are we going to look at next, Kevin?
I'll just briefly touch on this piece. This is The Last Roses here. I have so many friends in my life who are musicians. Danny B. Sunday has been supplying music that I've been using on all of my videos here. I have been greatly inspired by Rosario Flores, Maite Pizarro in Spain, and a number of different musicians, Shauna Hall here in America, and music, big part of my life. So this piece actually felt very rhythmic and these are all metal beads. And to me, these were almost like musical notes. And this is a piece that I feel, at least as my goal, I really wanted to make audible as well as visual. And so you get the sense of maybe a bass or notes on a piano.
Kevin, is there a purpose for taking it off of the base and having it mobile, these pieces as they are?
Yes, it's what I said about I love anthropology museums, and I love art museums, and then I love art that I have in my house or in a gallery where I can talk to the artist. And I really don't think that there should have been someone who decided that these are the things that should be in the anthropology museums and behind glass. These are the things that should be art and priced incredibly, out of range. And these are the things that you're allowed to play with. I want people to be able to have the same. For example, when you go into the I think for Lupita in Mexico City, you go to the beautiful anthropology museum there, and there's so much Maya and Aztec artifacts that are treated just as that. They're behind glass, but they're meant to be used in rituals. They're meant to be shaken and held over fire and danced with. And this is art. I don't think that we have this. I don't think we have art in our society that you could just dance with today. I think that it's kept behind glass. It's kept behind museum walls. It's beautiful, but I want to bring that back. I want to give people something that's not out of your range, and I want to give people something that is not that you can touch and hold, and it's not behind glass in some anthropology museum or behind. Not that there's anything. I love those museums. I just wish I could touch the pieces. I wish there were more things like that available to us today.
All right, very good.
And we'll go across to the other side of the gallery here.
Again, we are at Joyce's gallery in downtown Oakland, and we are looking at the art of Kevin Woodson live on Zoom. What are we looking at now, Kevin?
And I lied. There's one further rose here, and this is the one where I allowed myself to bring up a myth, and it's Castor and Pollux, the two twins, the Dioscuri, are protectors in the Greek myths. I had done at my last exhibit here, I had done an entire collection that was responding to poetry and myths, mainly inspired by Ovid. So I wanted to bring a little bit of that those last themes into this new exhibit.
Does myth always play a role in your art?
I'm sorry?
Does myth always play a role?
Yes. If my mom was able to, and she can chime in later, I've always had one of those active imaginations. We had a backyard as a child, and I reading Wizard of Oz books, Narnia books, even as a very young child, or I would go into the and the Dami opened up an entire new world. I think a lot of us probably had that experience, and it's always been a huge part of my. And I think it's always present in our culture and in America and around the world. And if you know what to look for, you see it everywhere. I'm starting to study a lot of Chinese myth right now, so. I think the most fun part about that is that when you read the stories, all of a sudden you understand the artwork. Thousands of years worth of paintings of waterfalls and monkeys suddenly make sense. I'll leave it at that.
What are we getting into next? Are these your birds?
Yes. So, Mom, we grew up in Illinois, and before global warming, we probably had, I think, good 6 or 7 months of snow every year in the middle of the state. And although it would have been great to grow the gardens year round, Mom kept a bird feeder out year round. And Mom is the kind of person, she'll bring the hummingbird feeder into the house, warm it up, and bring it back outside and change it for a cold hummingbird feeder. We would be bringing peanut butter out to the birds in the cold, many other things that I remember just giving to the birds in the snow. And we had a window that faced the bird feeder. And so I could constantly sit in front of that window and draw the birds when there weren't flowers blooming. Now Mom lives in Seattle and has a garden in Seattle that's just so beautiful and full of, once again, all of her birds. And so to me, this goes back to my childhood. And again, with the last collection I did that was so focused on myth, I had intentionally left the birds out because I did not want them to be a distraction. And so in this exhibit, I brought them back. People really asked for them. I love doing the birds. People love the birds. And I don't need too much of a more encouragement than that to put them in. So they're going to be in here a lot. One of my earliest garden friends, Mr. Kim, made a point that stays with me every time I paint a bird. He said, when I see you put a bird in the painting, I think you're just painting yourself. And so that's me as a bird.
Wow.
With one of these, I did try something new, and I'll take one piece off of the wall and show it here. And this is something you may catch a little glint or a glimmer of some of the pieces. I didn't want the jewelry and the sparkle to be limited to the three-dimensional sculptures. I wanted to have the crystals embedded and have the entire show be connected. So every piece doesn't have these crystals in them, but many do.
So these are the birds.
Yeah.
And those birds on the painting that you're at right there, those are from several different places, correct?
Yes. Um, these are from, a lot of them are from Mom's Garden in Seattle. And I also began feeding the birds out in my garden here in Oakland. So I think here's a great bird that we both share, the cedar waxwing. And I love, it's kind of like playing a game of catch with Seattle. They migrate through Seattle in the fall, and Mom always sees them and lets me know, or I see them migrating through here in the springtime, uh, and then they show up in Seattle. So there's migratory birds, there's birds that are more stationary in the garden, but all of these are birds that Mom or I have fed or left food out for.
Wow.
And I've been having the purple finches. This is a myna from Taiwan, and a kinglet. And then
moving on.
If we move to the next, yes, I think so. And this is a little bit more of, this is a bigger selection here. So in this case, the Garden of Adornment, this sculpture here, is paired on either side with with a tall, narrow painting to give you even more of the sense of that portal, or that doorway into another world. And this is the piece that I did end up naming for the Garden of Adornment. And as you can see, these are orchids and a bird that in Taiwan is known as a five-colored bird because it has five colors in it conveniently. And the orchids all have this different shape. They have much more of a flow to them, whereas the roses, I think, are more of a formal flower. Orchids they're playful. They have such great forms to them too, like the lady slipper orchids that have always looked like a mean old man with a big chin, that kind of like in the Muppets maybe, that would be cracking jokes, to lighter, more oncidiums that bloom and just flow everywhere, to more exotic species of orchids that really make you wonder about they're the marvel of this planet. And these, it's hard to see, but these have I was able to use crystals in this from a bead shop by my house with Pulun in Taiwan.
And tell me about the shape of this piece.
The shape of this piece, and there's 3 orchid pieces here, and they're much more flowing and not symmetrical. This is a piece that as I've been painting, as I've been creating these, I've wanted more and more to disconnect areas of an individual sculpture, so that it would become it would be multiple parts making up a whole. And this sculpture is made up of multiple elements that all flow together. I'd like to take this one down. I think it would be a lot of fun, but it takes about 5 minutes to get it repositioned. Involved pieces.
Are these 3 pieces that you're near right now, are they all together? Are they connected with the 2 paintings at each side? So we have this view right here. It's quite nice, and it seems like it does go together.
Yeah, they are for the purposes of this gallery, but they can certainly, like any collection, they can stay together, or like Monet's haystacks, they can be almost scattered to the 4 directions to every corner of the planet. and possibly reassembled later. They go together. I discovered how well they came together when I brought them here to the gallery. This one over here is made up of orchids and flowers that are more exotic, anthuriums, pincushion flowers. And this is one that I had a lot of fun being a little bit more whimsical, embedding fish instead, and a bird as well. But taking this to more of a fantasy space. And again, this is when I painted this one, I had not invented the three-dimensional sculptures. And so in the two-dimensional world, this is my mind trying to break free into the realm of dreams. On the other side is one of the last pieces I painted before this exhibit. And these are the magnolias, and we were already at a point where people were starting to be very concerned about the new coronavirus, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to be out in the gardens as much. And all the magnolia trees, 5 different kinds of distinct magnolias, bloomed simultaneously in the gardens at Lake Merritt, which we're so incredibly lucky. And so you get this wonderful tapestry. It looks like they might be flowers from an entirely different species, but they're not. They're all magnolias that all bloom in mid-February, right around Valentine's Day.
All right. Shall we move to your next set of pieces?
And with this, I hope if anyone from the San Francisco Dahlia Society is online, then thank you very much for the wonderful dahlias in San Francisco. Y maestra en México, muchísimas gracias para la dahlia y la flor dahlia y la Asociación Mexicana de la Dahlia. Dahlias are flowers that I have loved ever since I moved out to California. We didn't have these in Illinois growing up. And they're a flower that's become ubiquitous around the world. They originate in Mexico, and on the phone is the president and founder of the Mexican Dahlia Society, and it's a great honor to have Lupita Trevino here with me. And I've got the honor about 5 years ago to go to Mexico for the 20th anniversary of the Mexican Dahlia Society. And these flowers here are interesting. I painted these 2 years apart, I think. No, just 1 year apart. And as you can tell, it's an installation. And the dahlias, when I make sculptures out of them, have a completely different form than the roses or the orchids or some of the other flowers we'll see soon. And they ended up becoming a lot like clouds. They don't have the background on them. They don't have the base because I wanted to do one piece that was done as an installation. And I think it's quite fitting here because the flowers below them, these 3 taller paintings, are all flowers that I painted during the campfire, which was really a wretched time. And in many ways, I feel like emotionally, the fires were a time that was as hard for me as this COVID is right now. We couldn't go out to the garden because the smoke was so bad. We all had to wear masks. So I was able to bring flowers home from the Dahlia Gardens in San Francisco and paint these as a ritual and as a meditation to bring some sanity back into life after with these terrible fires going on. And so I painted the dahlias that are more in the forms of clouds above them. I painted those in 2019 during a period where there weren't any fires. And in fact, we were getting enough water. And so I like to think that as an installation, it's sort of like the clouds are putting out the fires of the time of this time when we had this other. It seems like there's so many things that we have to deal with in our lives, and I hope that there's rain clouds for our current crisis now.
Yes, we are always living in the permanent apocalypse now, it seems like, here in California. Kevin, before we move too far on, I actually have a question in here from Renee that I didn't want to miss. I think about a previous painting, and Renee just asked, what's the name of the rectangular large bird painting?
The rectangular large bird painting is My Shelter, and that is a painting, and it's sold. It's a painting that is named for a song by Danny B. Sunday, and I believe I made a video for that and actually included the words of that song. And to me, it seemed like birds always need shelter. They need it, and as we're sheltering in place, and a lot of those birds, I think, once the lockdown was already in place and we couldn't go outside anymore, and I was in my shelter in place, and the birds were right outside.
All right. What's up next? This is called the Star Piece.
We're thrown off a little bit, but we're okay. Okay, great. This is a piece, one of my favorite pieces of art, and just something that I've always wondered, like, how would you even begin to go about painting something like that, is Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. And there's just so much of him personally embedded into that piece. The colors, I think people have been inspired by it for years, but it's almost impossible to say this is a piece that was inspired, because it would be to copy Gustav Klimt. And in this case, I had the opportunity to take lovebirds. And again, this is orchids, and so you get a very flowing form of the sculpture. And I just took the inspiration of the jewelry, of the mystery of the kiss, of the atmosphere of flowers, the intimacy of the lace. And I'll take this off the base in just a second, and you'll see a lot of the mirrors in the backgrounds of these are gold. And this is a case where this is mounted on a pink background, because I think this is just such a passionate piece, and I wanted to use passionate colors and bring it to life. And these are beads, as you can tell. These are entirely different beads. These are beads that I've collected, some of them in Taiwan and some of them for years. And they're glass beads, and they're very much like the colors and forms and free spirit of Gustav Klimt's painting.
Really interesting. You're absolutely right. I can now see the influence, but I would have never thought about it. I would have never seen it without your explanation. So it really is an original piece that was inspired by that painting, The Kiss.
Thank you. And I have to get under it to just make sure it's positioned. And there it is, safely back in place.
So what are we doing next? Are we returning to some more of Kevin's birds?
Yeah, we'll go through a couple of smaller pieces now. And so these are whereas there's the piece with all of the birds. These are much smaller. I really wanted to make pieces that were not out of anyone's range, and that were very very easy to take and hold, and again done in the way that you can go right up and touch the paper. So these are birds from Taiwan, from Mom's garden, from my garden, and throughout the year they really add. They go through. This is a bird that's at the threshold. He's at that doorway right there, and you can tell he's thinking about it. And that brings us to the end of this side of the gallery, and we go back to the side where we started for a few more pieces.
This next piece that we're going to see is called Avatar of Roses.
Yes, similar to the roses that I pointed out earlier that were dreamlike, from the Oakland Rose Garden, in forms that represent more modern movements in floral design. These roses here are from that series, and there's one more from this. We're not going to go outside, but it's out in the window of the gallery, so you would see it from the sidewalk.
All right.
And I'll move on to this is our last grouping here, and these really are bird sculptures, and these are smaller. They have crazy shapes and beadwork and jewels, all coming.
Kevin, this is just to let you know we're getting a lot of reverb.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting that too. Okay. Yeah. So these are very small, and you can hold. These are much easier to hold in your hand and put back on its base. Just a wonderful stellar jay that came and visited at Mom's house in Seattle, with the lapis lazuli here, and some natural wood. So bringing the birds to life, and one that doesn't even have any beads, but uses these really fun fabrics. And for me, this one is a circus. It's fun. It's cut in the shape of a circus tent, and it just reminds me of how the birds are always giving us this great performance. And of course, they're together with paintings. With paintings that I think all of these come from Seattle. And there's just this nice difference of Seattle. It's cold, it rains, and so there's ferns, there's ivy, there's lots of evergreen trees growing everywhere, and a very different atmosphere. So I like finding the garden with all of its different atmospheres.
And it looks like we're moving to our final piece,
yeah,
which is called Rainbow Warrior. You have told me about this piece earlier, and it has quite a story behind it. And I don't want you holding back at all.
No.
Including the connection to your husband.
Yes, I saved this one specifically for last, because for me, this is one of the pieces that really defines what this exhibit is all about. This is something, this might actually be used, a shaman, for example, might be holding a piece like this, or working a ritual with a piece like this. To start with my husband, just to where Mitch prompted me, I had, and again, this is the orchids, so it is just this big swoosh. It's asymmetrical. There's a story when you see it, especially in America, you see a symbol for a doctor's office. You always see a staff with a snake, and that staff is the staff of Asclepius. I guess I lied, and I'm going back to one more Greek myth. And Asclepius was the famous doctor, the doctor to the gods, our first known doctor. And the reason that we have that snake on his rod is because he was walking through the grass with a staff, and a snake either bit him or whispered in his ear and taught him all of the secrets of medicine. When I made this, I used the flowers, I used the birds, the orchids, the Japanese white eyes from Taiwan. And my husband's a doctor, and I really wanted to have something that spoke to healing, because if there's any kind of ritual we need to do with these, it's healing rituals, and it's rituals that give the planet life and hope, and get us out of the dark, the apocalypse that Mitch referred to earlier. But I settled on the name Rainbow Warrior once again. I'm just so inspired by Danny B. Sunday, who, if she's here, she's in Berlin. I met her there during travels and have been just instant friends and constantly friends ever since then. And she wrote a song and I think the rainbow came out so strongly in this. And the Rainbow Warrior is just such a strong, powerful myth of the healing that we need right now for this planet. And so I just think of all of the pieces that I made to dance with, to move with. This piece just, it comes to life, and the feathers. I don't know if Mom put her bird to bed or not yet. But if Mom comes back on and Miel is still awake, you can meet the bird where all of these feathers came from. These are the tail feathers and wing feathers of a blue-crowned conure, who's probably very delightedly looking at them on the camera right now. This is the piece I wanted to end with for the formal part of this presentation. I've loved the colored hair for a long time, and I've noticed a lot of times if you see someone with colored hair and you ask them, you'll always find out invariably they're a bird person. They have parrots, or they're a flower person, because we just tend to come to life with these colors of the things that we love. And I guess I turned 50 and I'd never really dyed my hair anything but black. And I thought, you're never too old. And at a time like this, with this crazy COVID thing, I saw people were buying razors and just taking it or clippers and taking it to their heads. And I thought, this could be a time where I could just lament, this endless bad hair day, or I could go in the absolute opposite direction and go crazy and try something that I'd never thought of doing before. So I chose this color. I chose pink, the bright red, because I think it's pretty much the craziest and most shocking color that I could go. And so in the future, if I go more of a purple or a blue and continue down this path, I will have initiated this with something that really is like diving into the water, because I think And this time with COVID does, so many people, especially in the gay community, have talked about it's, in a lot of ways, it feels a lot like it felt during the time of AIDS. And I moved out to San Francisco in 1991, and moving here was in some ways a death sentence. And so many people know me for doing art in the circus, doing performance art at Mark Chester's studio, for doing art that really pushed the boundaries a lot. And they think, well, flowers, maybe they don't push the boundaries so much. And I think with this time, again, we're called. I had thought when I was 20, I might be dead in a couple of years, so I better try absolutely everything that there is to do. And I think at this time, again, with these terrible apocalypses that the world is going through, it's a scary time, and you can surrender to the fear. And I had thought that maybe if there was an apocalypse, I'd been through so much that I would surrender to the fear. But to my own surprise, really, with this exhibit, I brought in so much more art that was completely just sticking my neck out and taking the same kind of risks I took when I was 20. So
There we go. You're all unmuted.
Thank
We
you
all
so much
give
for
Kevin
coming.
a
You
great
let us have the
hand and
box.
thank him for
Yay,
a wonderful
bravo,
evening.
Kevin. Congratulations. Good to see you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Bravo,
Good to
Kevin.
see you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Okay, now, actually, I have muted you all again, but what I want to do now is if anyone has any personal comments they want to make, I will unmute you and let you speak and say whatever you want to say. Maybe you could just raise your hand and I'll, okay, hold on. So, Deborah, hi, would like to say.
I met Kevin at, I think it's Midway in San Francisco, maybe last year at a show. And I thought,
Yes.
I mean, I've had one of your cards on the board since, and I started doing this. It was so delightful. You are so delightful. You're just so delightful, and your work is beautiful and imaginative. And I love your link to myth and your childhood. And I'm a total bird and flower person.
Have you done color?
Oh, I did color first when I was like 15.
Good for you.
So yeah, I've done blue. Right now, I kind of like the gray. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I was like the Virgin Atlantic purple. It was really cool. So yeah, I love
and
you.
Deborah,
Beautifully with your shirt.
Deborah, thank you for the nearly naked man walking through the background of your picture.
Oh, how nice.
I'm
It's
sorry.
got a really nice butt.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to say something? Okay, so Lupita.
Yeah.
Sí, muchos saludos a Kevin. Estoy encantada de haber visto toda tu obra, Kevin. Tú sabes cómo te queremos acá en México, en la Asociación Mexicana de la Dalia. Y te extrañamos desde cuando estuviste acá con nosotros hace más de 5 años. Te he visto muy de cerca toda tu trayectoria, todos tus trabajos tan hermosos. Eres una persona muy talentosa, hermosísimos todo lo que pintas, pero cuando pintas dalias eres más talentoso todavía.
Ay, muchísimas gracias, maestra. Les extraño mucho.
Encantado. Y también te queremos mucho.
Gracias.
So I can't translate everything word for word, but I believe she did say how much they miss Kevin, miss his beautiful artwork, and that any artist is talented, but an artist who can draw dahlias is especially talented.
Salud. Salud.
Gracias.
Thank you very
gracias.
much. All right,
Yes.
is there anyone else who would like to say something? I know Kevin would love to hear from you. No one else wants to say anything? Okay, Stefan, hi. So
Yeah,
first of
hi.
all,
Stefan.
where are you located,
Hi.
Stefan?
Hey, Kevin, I'm in Berkeley.
Hi. Good, good.
So
Good to have you here and safe.
I came in late, but I remembered that Kevin had wanted me to ask where he is going to place
Oh, yes.
his beautiful emblem that was,
Yes,
it was
what-
graphic, made from one of the paintings.
And what Stefan is talking about is I've gone a long time and not had like much of a chop or you know, a sort of a symbolic signature. I have my name, and those of you who've known me in the past, I've had different Japanese characters sometimes. But this is something, especially if you go to kevinwoodson.com, you'll see this. I'm using this in my emails as simply as a shape, as a shadow. It's a fantastic logo, and it is something I think that I had promised Stefan, and I will. This is something that I will make a tattoo out of. Whether it's simply the shape or the images inside of it, or that with all of the beads, remains to be seen. But this is the piece, I think, that becomes my logo. So
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you very much, Stefan. And I think Virginia wanted to say something.
Yes, I do.
Hi.
Hello, Kevin. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where are you located,
The show looks
Virginia?
I am in Richmond, California. I met Kevin at Joyce Gordon Gallery. I just had an exhibit there that I had to take down and make room for Kevin's exhibit. So,
Yes.
Kevin.
Thank you.
One question I had is, what do you use to shellac your watercolors? What
This
kind
is
of finishes?
I use Liquitex, and I've experimented with different mediums. Golden makes one. Golden self-leveling medium is one that a lot of people use. For me, that leaves the paper too bendy. Liquitex has a varnish, has its version of the same varnish. I can't say what it be. You email me, or you message me on Facebook. I'll send you the exactly what it is that I'm using. But it has a finish that's much more rigid, and comes close to being an epoxy without actually being an epoxy, because the watercolors can react to an epoxy in not a positive way. But this is safe.
Thank you very much, Virginia. And
You're
there you go. And of course, how could we possibly exhibit without Mom saying something? I think, Mom, you have to. I'm sure Ken would like to hear something from you.
I'd love
would.
to.
This is the bird.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's on the bed yet. And
Oh, hello,
he
Mia.
found that some of his feathers are on one of the adorned paintings. And it just said company good.
Company's good.
And
so everyone here is my company, and
yes, he approves
good,
of Kevin's hair.
Well, we're so glad that you could join us for this exhibit.
Well, it was very informative. I learned a lot, even though I'm Mom.
All right, thank you. Is there
Thank you,
anyone
Mom.
else who would like to say anything? Okay, Michael, go.
I just wanted to say, Kevin, you and I go back a while, and from the very, very beginning. And I want to say that I applaud you. I applaud you because of you taking the initiative to really, really step outside the box with your talent. Instead of being put in that cube, being that conventional watercolorist, you have taken it to an entirely different level. And kudos to you. I mean, fantastic. I love what you're doing with the product. I really do.
Yeah, well, we invented it. I was,
you and
I had a huge, one of the,
well, I was saying that
one of the greatest, go ahead.
Well, you and I worked collaboratively together on it, you know, and you were very instrumental in helping me perfect it, which I thank you for. I really do.
Thank you. It was one of the great, it was an unexpected honor of my life, and something I never thought that without a chemistry degree or a doctorate in art, anyone would ask me to do. But I got to actually, I think because I was so critical of so many other watercolor papers, Michael included me on the design team for Stonehenge Aqua. So over a series of, over about 18 months, I tried this paper out and countless times and sent this highly detailed feedback. And for the group of artists that I know were also participating in this, it feels like we're family at this point. And Michael has done so many great papers and for so many artists on the planet that it feels like not the pain of a birthing process, but the great joy that results. And I would like to say that a lot of like even just calling these watercolors, I'm not committed to the watercolors. I typically likely to bring in gouache, coats of metal, other mixed mediums on the surface, because obviously I'm on this trajectory where things are just breaking free. But one thing that I'm deadly committed to is paper. Paper's been in circulation long before canvas. It's something that was invented 1,500 years ago, almost simultaneously in China and in Mexico. It was a revolution for the planet that was far greater than the internet is today, even though we're so amazed by these iPhones and the abilities. But paper pervaded every aspect of life, and not just writing, poetry, and access to text and the written word, and economies and the ability for the Aztecs, for example, to have an empire that spanned the Americas at the time, and similarly in China. But also, paper is something that's always used in ritual. You don't use canvas in ritual. You don't paint on a panel for a ritual. You want a ritual. You want something that you can color, that you can paint, you can make, you can wear, you can decorate your buildings with, and then if you need to, that you can. None of these are meant to be disposed of, but paper it's a temporary thing, like fire or smoke or water that we use. Thanks to Mitch Jeserich for the interviewing. Joyce Gordon Gallery here in Oakland, 614th Street. Mark I. Chester, the incredible engineer tonight. Chun Pong on the phone and the video for me. Martin Ott, who's been in Los Angeles at his computer tirelessly trying to shoot the technical. Maya Terrell, who is the assistant in the gallery and helping Joyce stay tuned. Kyle Vong, who's instrumental in just about everything for the past 10 years. And Eric Murphy, who curated this exhibit here and designed the hanging of the pieces. So thank you to everyone. And thank you very much for joining.